As you think about preparing your public comment or preparing statements for the hearings for public testimony, I want to make sure that I am able to frame for you how the documents are organized and point out some specific things that I have found on a read-through of each grade level so that you might be able to better hone in on particular things of interest that might lead to your comments. You can access the documents of the draft standards for each grade level. For mathematics, you'll see they're divided into K through 5, 6 through 8, and 9 through 12. You'll want to click on the document that represents the grade levels that you're interested in reviewing. The standards are organized a little differently than they have been in the past. They're organized by strand, but they are under generic headings, not necessarily the headings of either set of standards Indiana has been teaching. So the standards might appear in a heading different from where you're used to seeing it. All of the standards are listed under a strand to which they belong, but there's no indication in this draft whether a standard is a heading, if it is an actual standard, if it's an indicator, or if it is a sub-skill. Each standard is listed kind of at the same level. You'll also see that not all of the standards are listed in a developmental sequence. For example, the order in which the fraction standards appear is not the order in which they would be taught. So it'll take some serious study to determine whether all of the standards build appropriately or if there's any gap or redundancy that needs to be addressed in your comment or testimony. This is an example of what the standards documents look like when you open them. Again, you'll see on the left-hand side the content area of mathematics. The grade level here is grade 6, and then the strand. You'll notice that there are many standards here listed for number sense and computation, and they are numbered 1 through 12 in order. And again, under content area topic, you'll notice that there are headings, there are standards, there are indicators, there are sub-skills, which are not denoted differently from each other. So that'll be important for you to think about how you might suggest these standards be organized moving forward. Some of the major findings for mathematics are that with very few exception, all of the content and skills required by the Common Core state standards have been subsumed within the new draft Indiana College and Career Readiness Standards. The mathematical practice and math process standards, however, are just a simplified list of standards at the end of the document. I would want to be sure that the entire explanation of the mathematical practice standards or process standards are included in our standards moving forward. In most grade levels, additional content has been added on top of the content and skills that were already in Indiana's standards. That will result again in our standards having breadth over depth, which is not the goal. So you might think about what standards do not need to be in your grade level as you look across grade levels at the progression. And because standards were pulled together from multiple sets of standards to create the best standards, there are places where terminology is inconsistent, and there are standards which are near duplicates of one another. You might want to make a recommendation about how standards could be combined or eliminated. So when we think about what you might want to share in your testimony or comment, I would certainly make suggestions for language consistency where you find differences in terminology being used across or within grade levels. You could speak to redundancies, which need to be eliminated by combining standards or moving content into just one heading. You might recommend moving content to an appropriate heading to keep it grouped together appropriately. You might also recommend removing specific standards, which make the curriculum too crowded, which makes it not viable. Suggestions for organizing the standards, such as clusters, headings, domains, or a numbering system would also be helpful. You might also list standards where examples are needed, because the majority of examples that have been included in the standards previously have now been removed.